Hi, my name's Olivia, and I get this question all the time. And we're going to talk about it. So put me on in the background as a podcast type of thing, just audio, or hang out and grab yourself something to drink. Today I'm drinking this peppermint herbal by Harney and Son Fine Tea. I like this brand. I get it from Target. So I get this question all the time of why do I not make more intermediate videos? Why do I not make more intermediate content or review more intermediate books? I want you to think about what an intermediate practitioner looks like to you. Like what makes up an intermediate practitioner? And most likely you're thinking of somebody who is really knowledgeable and has a lot of experience. That's the biggest piece, is the experience part. And I know that I am not the only one that gets this question. Anyone who makes any kind of occult content, anyone who writes any kind of occult books, it's always like they're not sharing enough. And there's two different reasons for this. I think because a lot of these people have knowledge that is not about sharing. They're not supposed to share. It's of a closed practice or of closed knowledge. And a lot of occult practices and just occult anything is like that. Or the other side is that we can't teach experience. We can't teach practice. That's something that is based in the practitioner themselves. There's the foundational knowledge, right? There's the foundational knowledge of, I'm not going to continue to only make videos about grounding and cleansing and banishing and spellcrafting. Like, these are not going to be the sole things that I'm making, because yes, those are foundations and those can get tiresome to listen to the same thing over and over. Hence why I'm very burnt out on reading witchcraft books in general, because most of them are 101 and I am so tired of reading the same thing over and over. Intermediate, it almost feels untouchable. So for example, on that side of the spectrum of people wanting knowledge that is not there to share, it's not ours to share, right? Is that banishing ritual that I did for Annie. It's not my ritual to share. So I'm not going to share that. It's just one of those pieces that has been taught, but I know is not I don't have the authority to share it. Then we go to the other end of the spectrum where it's experience. When you think of somebody intermediate or advanced at anything, any skill, it all comes down to experience. It doesn't come down to how many books they read on it or how many items they have that relate to this skill or this hobby or lifestyle or whatever. It comes down to how long have they been doing it and how often do they do it. And more often than not, people who have more practice and more experience are better and more intermediate and can take anything, foundations, and create them into something intermediate. As a mundane example, an artist, you can give two people, one person not well practiced in drawing or doodling or art, and then another person who does that all the time. You can give them a ballpoint pen and a napkin, and odds are the person who's been doing it for years won't even think about it. They're just going to start sketching, and it's probably going to come out really cool, and it's probably going to impress a lot of people of the skill that they have to create with nothing but a napkin and a ballpoint pen. But when we look at the other person who doesn't really ever draw or has any practice in that, maybe they're interested but has never actually put pen to paper and doodled, then they probably are drawing just lines or stick figures or sticking with the fundamentals, which there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that this person is so much less experienced and has less experience to pull from in order to put into that drawing. That's kind of an example. It all loops back to nobody can teach you experience. And a lot of intermediate things, again, boils down to UPG, which is unverified personal gnosis. There's a lot of really powerful, incredible practitioners that I know, and all of their practice is built on a foundation of something. So whether that be a foundation of some kind of nature practice, a foundation of Catholicism, a foundation of some other ceremonial practice, whatever it is, maybe they took little pieces from that, like the way that they dress candles, if they use candles, or the way that they set up a nature altar, just small things like that. And they've built their own foundation layer by layer. So this is another thing that kind of separates a beginner from an intermediate person, is layers. And it's all about pulling from experience and pulling from past knowledge that you've learned, or even just not being afraid to experiment. Protection wards can go from anything so simple to drawing a sigil in oil, or like a sigil on a piece of paper and slipping it under a doormat for protection over your home. Or you can be doing that on top of other things, on top of dressing that paper with oil, or creating a very specific home protection prayer, or starting to build a relationship and work with the spirits of your home in order to have that also on your side of protecting this home, and putting that power into the sigil. So then suddenly this sigil becomes something more than just this thing that you drew on a paper with the idea of protecting your home. It has this meaning and intention behind it. It has this power behind it because of the amount of times that you've used it, the amount of energy that you've put into it. An intermediate practice looks like layers of dedication, experience, and experimentation. So that's why it's kind of frustrating for both people asking the question, people getting asked the question, is there's this miscommunication of, as much as more advanced people want to teach other people, beginners, to become more advanced, to become more intermediate, they can't, because again, experience can't be taught. So that's why you will probably hear practitioners online constantly saying, that's why we call it a practice. The hardest part about teaching anything spiritual, teaching anything of the occult realm, is that so much of it is experience. So much of it cannot be taught. So much of it cannot be taught from one person to another. Like, I can give you the rundown of X, Y, and Z of what to do, of steps, but when you do the steps, you're going to learn so much more than I can teach you through these steps. So it's a difficult back and forth between both parties of wanting to teach the other person and the other person wanting to learn. But there's that piece in the middle that the people teaching can't give. They can't show. They just don't have the ability. Like, we don't have that to give in the first place. So we can give you steps and ideas and, a foundation to start, but it's up to the person learning to actually take those steps and continue to do them. And eventually you'll find this style, this comfortability of, oh, okay. Like, at first, everything's going to feel weird. When you first walk into a gym, all these machines look wild. And you're like, I don't know if I put my hand in that or my foot. Where do the weights go? Where does the pin go? And it's like a whole thing. You have to learn all of these little foundations. But the more you learn it, you don't even think about it. So if you've never seen like gym equipment before and you are starting, everything is going to seem alien. It's all going to seem uncomfortable, and you're going to have to think about every little thing that you do, of like how to change the weights, of making sure to wipe everything down, of like all the etiquette that you have to learn. Like, all of these things are going to be just things that you learn with experience. But then 6 months down the line, a year down the line, these things aren't even going to be things that you think about. It's just going to be things that you do. It's just a part of how you go to the gym. And most likely you're going to find your own flow, right? Like, which machines you want to go to and which ones in whatever specific order, or like, do you stretch before, after, or both? Or, like, you have a system now because it's become something that you have made comfortable for you. So it's kind of the same in the spiritual realm. And it's, again, hard to explain because it's not something that I can teach you. It's not something that I can give you. I think another thing that I've noticed that kind of separates beginner from intermediate and advanced are how woven in their practice is into their lives. Now, yes, some people's daily practice may be more intensive than others, but again, that gym analogy, some people might be doing these really hardcore workouts that other people just don't need to do. Like, other people are just like, I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder. I don't need to be doing these insane workouts to be like huge, right? Or just muscle mass of a person. All I want to do is make sure that my body stays active. So if you're one of those people in the spiritual realm, all I want to do is make sure that I'm prosperous and protected and healthy. Like that's what most people want. And that's okay. Like, if you have a daily practice, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be these like drawing the giant pentagram on the ground with the candles everywhere and like the whole thing, the whole shebang. It can just be that you're making a specific kind of tea that day, peppermint, and you throw a little chamomile in there because it's Thursday, because you want to draw in some prosperity. You want the money sooner than later. So you throw in a little bit of cinnamon. I don't know if that would taste good, but you get the idea. Or, for example, when I took the Hecate course, that was a little more extensive. So it was a minimum of 5 minutes a day, like minimum. But as that practice grew and as the curriculum layered on things, that daily practice became a lot. And some people have that daily practice. But again, I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder, right? Like, there are certain things that I'm not trying to be like the baddest witch in town. I just really like to practice. So there's other people that just really like to go to the gym or really like to stretch and do yoga or just really like the health lifestyle. All this to say, integrating magic in your life, in your everyday life, it doesn't matter how busy you are. It should be integrated in ways that you're already doing things. So again, I make tea, I make coffee every day. Add it into that because you're already doing it. Or if you cook a lot, add it into that because you're already doing it. And yeah, sure, again, it might be a little uncomfortable at first of like, oh yeah, I need to like say this spell over my food or set out some offering for my ancestors or whatever it may be. Yes, at first it might be like, oh, right, that's a thing that I'm trying to do. But then once you get comfortable, it's just part of your routine. It's just part of your lifestyle. And it doesn't have to be a thing that you're like trying to carve out time to do. Now let's talk about more advanced resources. The thing is, when people ask for more advanced resources, what they're asking for and what they're going to get are two completely different things. The reason for that is because, again, a lot of the things that they're asking for are pieces that A, cannot be taught, or B, are closed practices or closed information. But what you're actually going to get is historical texts and scientific texts and academic texts. And all of these are, for the most part, very dry to read and not as exciting as a lot of people want this information to be. It's just knowledge. It's just being able to understand the past practitioners and what you can do as a modern practitioner and kind of put those things together. So when these people are asking for more advanced texts and they're getting academic texts and historical texts and scientific text, they get really disappointed and they're like, well, this isn't what I wanted. I want like your personal in-depth practice. And I'm not going to share that. A lot of practitioners aren't going to. That is ridiculously personal and was not taught to us. It was so personally experienced and so personally catered to, I suppose. I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but it's too personal. And even if we did share it, it wouldn't do anything for you. I will suggest a few books, that some of which I've already reviewed, others I haven't, but are fantastic, so I'm going to share them now. But again, when you read these, I really think that a lot of people are going to be like, this isn't what I wanted. So just assess like what you're expecting and what you're actually going to get, because these are, I would consider, some of the more intermediate reads that I personally think are also refreshing over the 101 books and the beginner and the ones that I'm just so sick of reading. I literally gave away like 50 books recently because all of them, not that they were bad books, it was just, they're all the same. Like once you've read one beginner's witchcraft book, you've read them all. And that's a whole other tangent. I'm not blaming any of the authors for that. I know that a lot of it is like publishing companies and whatnot, but like, anyway, the books. The first one is Conversation with Plants, The Path Back to Nature by Nikki Durrell. This one's a fantastic one. I have done a quick review on this. It's fantastic. The other one is The Herbal Alchemist's Handbook by Karen Harrison. This one is a quote unquote classic. And I refer to this book all the time. It's so good. So those two are in the more advanced area. The other one is more of a not historical text, but it's on the history of magic, and it's called Magic, A History of Alchemy to Witchcraft from the Ice Age to the Present by Chris Godston. So again, this one is just kind of the historical changes and context of magic and religion and science. So there's that one. That one's also very good. This next one is Planetary Magic, Educated in Planetary Magic or Planetary Work. But this book was very dense, for lack of a better term, very dense. So it's a good reference book. And again, it's dry. So it's not like one of those really fun books to read, but at least in my opinion, it's an opinion. That's a fantastic one. Then of course we have not all, but a lot of Jason Miller's books. So my first one is, the first one I have is not, it's actually like online on Kindle. It's not Kindle. I don't know. I have the ebook of it, whatever that is. And it is Sorcerer's Secrets. That's a fantastic book to just kind of start out with. The next one is Elements of Spellcrafting. It's one of my hands down favorite books because it just goes through so many aspects and put into words so many things that I had an understanding of, but I couldn't solidify into like a term or a phrase or an explanation. So that was a fantastic one. And again, it will really help you up your spellcrafting game. The next one is Protection and Reversal Magic, also by Jason Miller. Really good protection and reversal magic, as it says on the title. There are more ceremonial practices in there, and that's another thing that you'll find is if you're asking for more intermediate, then a lot of the time you'll find more ceremonial type of things. I have Financial Sorcery, also by Jason Miller. Really good book about gaining money and money work and kind of like the behind the scenes of that instead of just like lighting your green candle and just like, you know, shaking your titties at the moon or something. That's not something I would do, but you know what I mean? It's like the underworks of money magic. The next one is Consorting with Spirits by, again, Jason Miller. I've also done a recent review on this book because it's a more recent book that came out. And that one, again, fantastic book on spirit work and a little more advanced. And he actually does talk a little bit about a couple of his own experiences that I think are really helpful to understand spirit work in a lot of different aspects. So give that one a read if you haven't already. And then I want to say the last one. I want to make sure. There might be more. I don't know. But I think for now, the last one is another planetary book that I also just really, really liked. It's Planetary Spells and Rituals by Raven Digitalis. This one also talks a lot about why to use specific planets for specific things. And it's not just Venus is on Friday and Mars is on Tuesday. Like, it's not this stale surface level explanation. There's a reason why you would use a specific planet for a very specific reason. So it's all layers. It's a lot of layers upon layers. And it's also about being cunning and you'll hear Marshall from Witch of Southern Light talk a lot about this. You have to be cunning in this. So like say the moon is, you're wanting to work with the moon, but it's in this specific sign or whatever, and why, like how you can kind of form that to work with what you have and be cunning. I wouldn't really say that this book stack is intermediate reading. Like maybe I would put it as intermediate compared to the 101 books, but these books, I guess, are just a better shift or give you a better idea. And it's better than like sniff some lavender and put some rose quartz up your butt. It takes you from like the surface level type of thing to more of finding your own path and finding what you're looking for in this like intermediate piece. And the last thing I want to talk about is what I mentioned earlier, is be cunning. The traits of advanced practitioners are people who have a lot of experience, people who layer things upon layers, and people who are cunning. And what I mean by people who are cunning, again, you will hear Marshall talk a lot about this on his platform. So if you want to hear a little more about that, then go follow him if you haven't already. Being cunning is working with what you have. And I know that this is something that so many practitioners are always saying, and you're like, that doesn't help. But take that example of the artist and the non-artist. These two people have the same tools, but one artist is creating something that is fantastic and beautiful with a pen and a napkin, whereas the person who's not an artist, who doesn't know what to do with these tools, doesn't have that experience, probably won't come up with a ton. I know that an experienced practitioner, I could give them a tea light candle and a bowl of water, and they could do something very powerful and very impactful compared to a beginner who has all the tools and all the colors of candles and all the different charged waters and all the oils, bones, you name it. The beginner is probably not even going to hit as hard as the advanced practitioner, because the advanced practitioner has that experience, has that know-how, and can use what they have regardless of what that is. So in context, they are cunning. That's why people don't make more advanced or intermediate content or books. It's because we can't. These things are not taught. They're experienced. Teaching things more intermediate. Again, I can talk all day and I can try to go in depth, but at the end of the day, what you get out of what I say is really just up to how you use it, if you use it. So the sun is shining straight onto my lens and everything is going to look washed out. That is where I'll leave this video for you today. Thank you for hanging out with me and chatting about this topic over tea with me. Thank you so much for watching. Best of luck, be kind to each other, and may your gods treat you as you've treated others. Bye.